Good evening. Hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar, talking about what's coming up in October with the first ever digital PSAT coming to your shores between October 2nd and 31st. You'll be seeing it very soon. We'll take a minute here as the room fills up. I see people still trickling in. We hit a plateau and we will commence the commentary. Here tonight with my friend and colleague, Mr. Matt Kiesner.
Happy to have you, Jed.
Happy.
Happy to be here.
Yes, Matt is a master of all things standardized testing. Been writing, studying, researching for over a decade in this space. Maybe 13 years? Is that?
12, yeah.
12 years.
12, yeah. But
again, yeah.
Oh, not quite lucky 13 yet.
It's coming, man. It's coming, I tell you. All right, so I think it's starting to plateau. It looks like we're hitting our number. So let's go ahead and jump in. So tonight it's me and Matt talking about what's going on with the PSAT. We're gonna have time at the end for Q&A, and we will be sending you a copy of the recording. So you'll be receiving this. Whoa, there's a lot of questions which just came in.
Yeah.
We are going to hopefully answer a lot of that. And then we'll go to some of the Q&A. That's like 7 questions. Very impressive. Mm-hmm. All right, here we go. Let's jump in. Here's the material for tonight. Oh, first, about us. What do? We change a students' beliefs and their abilities, their competencies, and then they change their outcomes, where they end up going to school and beyond. And the 3 things that we do: academic tutoring, test preparation, and EF coaching. Tonight's focus is test prep, helping talk about what's going on with this new PSAT. Our agenda, 3 points. What is it? Why is it not as much, but what is it? Strategies. How do you approach it? What's a smart way to think about it? And then finally, timelines. Looking at how do I think going forward in terms of the PSAT preparation and then beyond that. So the PSAT, if you didn't know, is not a college admissions test. It's really a preparatory exam getting you ready if you want to take the SAT, which is a college admissions test, or pivot to the ACT. But the PSAT still is tied to national merit, and we will talk briefly about what that means. And why that matters for the very small portion of kids for whom that's relevant. And
yeah, I know some schools will be they also may use it for AP placement or honors and stuff. That's some high schools will do that.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
PSAT does factor into high school placement, no question about that. So to begin, the timing, where are we? And the slide's been changing over time. It used to be last year and the year before, because there have been milestones, but they've been hitting them. And now we are almost at the end. The March SAT was digital across the world, not in the US. And the May SAT was digital across the world, went off without a hitch. Now, next up is the October PSAT for those who will be in grade 8, 9, and 11. We expect the score return to come back by Thanksgiving. And then December is the final paper SAT in the US, except for those who have an accommodation, who have a disability. But March, it's full on. March, the SAT is digital going forward into the future. The wave of testing has always been shifting from paper to digital, and we're finally catching up with the biggest test in the country. So, and then finally, March of next year, we are all taking digital tests. So adaptive testing. Let me talk through what this means, because it's a digital adaptive test. Now, there are 2 ways that tests can be adaptive. The one way, which many people are familiar with, is like the GMAT, and the way the GRE was for about 20 years, where every single time you answer a question, the next question is going to be responding to your previous question. That's fully item adaptive. That is not what this is at all. This is more akin to what happened with the GRE back in 2012. The GRE is section adaptive. So you have a full section, and you can change your answers, go back and forth, change 15, go back and forth. And then at the end of the section, it calculates your score and then sends you to either an easier or a harder next section. So there's that sequence for verbal, and then there's a 10-minute break, and then the same sequence for math. So the PSAT, that's how it's going to work, the upper and lower modules. It's going to be administered using something called the Blue Book app, which is available tonight. If you are curious, you go and Google PS or SAT Blue Book app, College Board Blue Book app. You'll download it onto your computer or onto your laptop, onto a tablet. It'll be ready to go. And when you use the application, that's the exact same app you're going to be using in October, and the same app you'll be using in March. It is one app. The format is set, so there really is no question of what's it going to be like. You can find out tonight. You're going to enter information, like you're essentially preload information on your tablet or your laptop before you go to the school. And you're going to enter your demographic stuff, your background, also the test downloads in advance. Though it's encrypted and locked, you can't open it. When you go to the test center, they're going to give you a code. You enter the code and your test is unlocked. The reason they do that is so the need for Wi-Fi is absolutely negligible. If everyone was waiting to download a big, 20 meg file, that's where bad Wi-Fi is an issue. But they're depending upon you in advance to download things. So when you go in there, you just enter a code, it opens it up, and then the entire test runs not on Wi-Fi, but on your device. At the very, very end, when you're ready to tabulate your score and send it up to the cloud, all you're going to do is send your text file, which is a few kilobytes, tiny file, and then that's all you're sending up to the internet. And then you go home, then you're done. So you need Wi-Fi literally for seconds at the front and at the end, and the interim before doesn't even matter. So if your school has the worst Wi-Fi in the world, it doesn't really make a difference as long as you have a few seconds of good Wi-Fi. And if you need any help, they'll wait and so forth. But yeah, this is very, very different than previous tests like the ACT when it went digital in 2019. There were tech issues with the grid went down, you lost everything, the internet crashed. That isn't the case anymore, and everything is being saved constantly to your own device. So even if the power goes out, doesn't matter. Everything's being saved keystroke by keystroke, time-stamped onto your laptop or your tablet. So incredibly, advanced in terms of security and reliability. And you don't need this massive, amazing Wi-Fi or power grid because they're going to remind you 10 times, bring your device charged up. And the whole administration time is 2 hours and 24 minutes with a break. So you'll have enough juice in almost all cases. And if you need help and power, they'll have rooms and there'll be a cable and so forth. So that really is how it works. That's the nuts and bolts of it, and adaptive testing. Here's the quick and dirty, the major changes. Shorter test. It's the digital PSAT is short, 2 hours 24, and it's the exact same length as the full scale digital SAT. That's one change. The scales are different in terms of the scoring. You're still going to be capped out at a 760 per section with a top score of 1520, whereas the SAT, your top 800 per section and your top score of 1600. So that's going to be one difference. Otherwise, same amount of time. You're going to have more time to answer each question, which is very cool. You're going to have they're smashing together reading and writing. It's very new. So it's just going to be verbal or evidence-based reading and writing, but call it verbal. And you're going to have reading going from long form to very short form, one little paragraph, one question, next topic, one little paragraph, one question, next topic. More, it's very different than the old long form reading passages. So more topics. And also you're going to have a calculator constantly. It's going to be available right there on the screen. You open it up when you want to open it up for every math question. You have a graphing Desmos calculator just baked into it. Other changes, you're going to have a lot more flexibility. So before, going back forever, I've been in the industry since 2001, there was always the PSAT day, October 13th, October 17th, whatever it was. But now schools are going to have this big range. They're going to have the 2nd to 31st, all these days. They can offer it staggered. They can say kids A through D taking it on Monday, kids E through taking it the next day, could be juniors taking it Friday, sophomores taking it Monday, especially if they believe their population of students is going to have a hard time finding a device or bringing a device, and they're trying to spread out their battery of their Chromebooks, their MacBooks, whatever they have to work with, or their desktop computers. If they only have 70 of them and they have 500 kids, they can still get everybody in over a period of days. And so that's one of the reasons that they're doing it like this. Also, we mentioned scores are coming back fast. Many times scores came back Christmas time, roughly, or even after. Now your scores are back before Thanksgiving. And eventually that'll be really quick. This is still, they're being a little cautious, their first big administration, but they're talking about with the SAT, having your scores back to you in days versus weeks. And so it was around 10 to 14 days for the first, for the March and May tests overseas. But eventually this gets down to take it on a Wednesday, your scores back on a Monday. And that's a real game changer versus all the paper shipping paper, scoring it, scanning it, putting it back. That all goes away. All right, things staying the same. The test content is predominantly the same. The PSAT math is testing the same material, except for there's a fewer word problems. I mentioned the scoring shift. It's going to be the same scoring as before, and PSAT is still going to be used for national merit. Okay, and I'm going to hand things over now to my friend Matt.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the digital PSAT format, and then these numbers are the same for the SAT. So the structure and timing of the SAT and the PSAT are exactly the same. Previously, like last year's PSAT, there were on the reading there were fewer questions, and on the math sections there are fewer questions. Then now they're exact. They're the differences are pretty negligible, and really are mostly shown up on the math section. So you have a reading writing section, and that is the there's 2 minute modules, and then 54 questions broken into 2 27 question modules on there. Then math doing the same thing, 22 questions, 2 35-minute modules. So it's a lot shorter than any of the other SAT PSAT products previously. There are also that number of questions does count these like pre-test questions, and so they're basically experimental questions that don't count. When you're taking the test, there's no way to identify which questions are the pre-test, so I would not worry at all, like, oh, I think this one's not going to count, I'm not going to answer it. Just there's a question in front of you, do your best to answer it, and don't worry about it, because you have no way of really telling. Next one. All right, so timing, and there, this it's shorter. There's a 10-minute break on there, and so you'll be done 2 hours 24 minutes. I think one of the things that they're trying to do is make it so they can schedule. For most schools, you can schedule that before lunch and not have to mess with having a weird lunch period. Which if you attend a large school, there might be 4 lunch periods or something to get every student through there. And so this is meant to kind of like be easier for the school administrations. And then we already said more time, more short, so we can move forward. And kind of give you like this, that if you want to kind of divide it out, so for all of the verbal questions, you have about 71 seconds per question. That would be reading and answering. But again, as Jed mentioned earlier, the passages are, they're 2 or 3 sentences on there. They're not, it's not 800 words, in a full page. And likewise with the math, obviously I would, as the test, every module starts easy and gets harder on math, and I would certainly wouldn't want to use 95 seconds for the first couple questions, because they are pretty, they're questions that are really for everyone to get right. So if we could, you would definitely want to leave some time for because the harder stuff is, it can be tricky for sure. And so and then there's there are you have to take less questions than and it says the current PSAT, but really it should say the like last year's PSAT, right, from last October. So you have to do if your questions, and that is part of the design of that adaptive, is that because there's a decision tree where you answer a first set, and then essentially it's grading your work, and then it shoots you to one or the other, depending on how well you did. They can get a more predictive score with fewer questions, and I think that's the why they switched to adaptive in the first place, so make that a shorter experience. All right, so I think some of these are similar, but it's still the section adaptive, and I think it's not question adaptive. There's it's important that once you're in that module, which is what they're calling a section, you can move freely forward. If you can go back, or you can even mark for flag for review if you like, oh, I don't feel good about question 7. You can put it has a system in there to put that information in there, so you can go back to it. I think that a lot of students are worried that it's going to be a situation where they're stuck in something. But Jed, you want to
take it over?
Yeah.
And one piece, I want to make sure you understand that it's the test you have will look different than the test your neighbor has. And the kids, like, they're going to be changing up the order of the questions. So my number 3 is your number 18. Let's unverbal. Also, for the same question, my answer choice is A, and for you, it's D. So they're going to be, that's why you can't go and text your friend, 1 is C, 2 is B. That gets blown out. That's one of the fun things about this. There's going to be a lot of variability. We also don't know just yet if they're going to be giving students different questions. So if everyone's going to get 3 level 5 algebra questions, but mine look different than yours do. And also this thing called templating, where maybe my answer is 15 for this triangle, but for you, it's going to be 30. And they actually do these slight modifications. But there is not going to ever again be one single test form. So it's going to be different forms and different orders, different answer choices. And that is one of the ways they get a lot more test security. And that's one of the reasons why I could administer it on Tuesday. And then the kids can't go and say they memorize the answers and give to their friends, because the answers are all going to be different, different order, different questions. So it's going to be a lot more secure. That's one of the main reasons why they're doing this, is test security, honestly.
Yeah.
And flexibility.
I was to say, well, the only downside is really that it does kind of eliminate PSAT memes on on the social medias, which is too bad.
It might get rid of some memes, unfortunately.
Because no one's taking the same test, so you can't really make jokes anymore.
There'll be fewer
RIP.
jokes. It's going to be a sad day for us in PSAT land. So the other thing, I want to throw this out there, it's not going to affect you, but in terms of the how they make the sausage, one of the reasons why we can go from 90 some items down to 50 items on verbal, let's say, is because they're also doing differential item weighting, which means that this item number 7 might count twice as much as item number 9. And you'll never know. And before they do this with item response scoring, they're doing all these correlations. They'll give kids like 10 questions, and they realize, oh, kids who get this question right almost always get these 4 questions behind them right. Therefore, do we have to ask all 4 questions, or can we ask this one question and weight it more intensely? And so that's one of the reasons why we're going to have differential weighting, which again allows you to eliminate a bunch of items, have a shorter test, but there are fewer items. Also, careless errors cost you more when you're going from 100 down to 50 items, but it's what allows the test to be so short. So that's one difference forever. For almost 100 years, every single item is always counted the same. There was one raw point converted to a scaled point. It was 1 to 1. So the easiest ones, the hardest ones didn't matter. They all 1 point. Not anymore. So different items have different weights. So it changes the scoring, and we're not going to have this simple calculus of, oh, you missed 3, you scored this. That all goes away. So we're getting to a different place, kind of less transparency with scoring. But again, the gains you get are, you get out of there in 2 hours and 20 minutes. So you're trading off some transparency for a faster, a shorter test, which I think is a good trade-off in the grand scheme of things. Here, again, the example scoring. So for math, you have 20 operational items, 2 experimental items, which don't count, but they're going to be helping them pre-test items. So let's say I get 10 right. I miss 10 items. I get 10 right. I'm going to be moved at the end of my section. So again, I do all 20 items, 22, 2 experimental, 20 operational. I finish it. And then instantly it funnels me to my next section. That's the adaptive section. So I have my baseline, which everyone takes with a similar baseline. And then if I do under 14 right, I'm going to the easier module right now. My top score on the PSAT now is going to be between, the 200 is the low. My top score is a 610. This is a little ballpark here. That being so, if I do really well, I can still do well, but I missed 10 in the front. So because I missed 10, I'm not getting a 760 because I already missed 10 items. Now, conversely, if I do better on the baseline section and I get 15 right, well, then you know what? I'm going to the harder module. And then I've already got 15 right. So I've locked in 420 points and my top score is much higher. So that really is how this works. And they may end up eventually adding more than 2 modules, but right now it's baseline, everyone takes, and then either an easier or a harder one, and then you're finished. But it may be there's an easier, a middle one, and a harder one down the road. But right now it's just binary, easier, harder. We'll look at that. I mentioned,
I'll say, but in the testing experience, we're kind of talking kind of like the inside, behind the scenes stuff. You're just going to have a second module that they're not going to label it,
you'll never know.
Yeah. And honestly, if your score is, 600 in that section, like you probably will never know if you got to the upper or lower, right? Or,
Yeah.
or 550. I mean, it could go either way. So
That's right.
it's best not to overthink about like, oh, what did I make a bad choice, or like just you have to kind of just, okay, there's the second module. Let's get question one right, and kind of keeping that sort of, it's like playing baseball. You gotta watch every pitch.
Yep, I like it. And here's just an example, just to throw at you how the scoring is quite different. This is from the Blue Book app. We took test one, and the kid in blue, the bottom, on the first verbal module, kid got 18 right. Didn't do as well. So she was funneled to the easier test. Then that student did great, got 25 right. So total correct, 43. Final score scaled up is 560. Compare that to the student, the top student in green, got 25 right, crushed the first module, did really, really well. Then went to the harder module. At that point, though, the student had a really tough section, got 7 right, missed a whole bunch. So total correct was 32, but then got a 580. So look at that difference. 43 right, 560, 32 right, 580. So we see it's never again going to be a one-to-one balance, of raw score to scaled score. Now it's, well, which items did you miss and on which section? So there is going to be, again, you can't compare to your friends. Hey, I missed only 6. I got this. Like, no. Which questions did you miss and on which section? That's how it's different. So let me show you an example of what this looks like. There is going to be a very meaningful difference in the average difficulty of the question you're being asked if you're funneled to the easier or the harder module. They really have a different recipe. They're each going to have easy, medium, and hard questions, but the ratios look very, very different. And then all that being said, did I not have the weights? Oh, this is sorry. One important thing, as Matt mentioned, we're giving information about how this test works, how it operates, the undergirding, the structure of this thing. But part of it, if you start worrying, am I in the easy one? Am I in the hard one? That's wasted mental energy. If I'm trying to figure out, does this one count more or less? You'll never know ever. It's not worth it. Is this item experimental or is it operational? Does it count? You will never know ever. Ever. They won't tell you even after your test return. So these things, as Matt said, keep your focus on the item in front of you, and that's going to really help you in so many ways. So let me show you an example of this. The baseline module, we call module 1. Here's how it's structured. So we have the questions we're calling level 1, 2, 3, and 4. In terms of level 1 is very easy, level 2 a little bit harder, 3 is a little harder, and 4 is very hard. So they're going to throw at you 2 level 1 questions, 2 very easy ones. Then a couple softballs. Then they're going to throw at you 10 level 2. So look, that's the dominant piece here is still easier. But then we go to level 3 questions. They'll give you 7 of those, and then they'll give you 3 level 4. That's the baseline that everybody in the room will get a baseline looking like this. Okay, they're all going to get this nice mixture of mostly mid-level, a few hard, a couple easy, mostly mid-level. Now the next thing is, if you don't do as well, let's say you miss 10, you missed a bunch of the level 3s and 4s, then they're going to shift you to the easier module. Now this module has a different feel, different recipe, different tone. Level 1 questions, before you had 2, now you have 7. Okay, so we're trying to figure out, because we're not going to give you as many hard ones, we're going to give you a lot more easy ones. Level 2 questions stays pretty similar from 10 down to 9. Level 3s, they drop from 7 down to 5. Level 4s, they're going to drop from 3 down to 1. So they're not going to ask as many hard questions. They're going to ask you a lot more level 1s and so forth. Now compare that, if you take the baseline again, the middle, the blue module, and you do really well, and you get 16 right, then they're going to put you into a very differently shaped module. That module, they're not going to give you 7 level 1 questions. They're going to give you 1. The assumption is, again, we're not going to waste our energy. You did very well in the first module. We're going to give you harder problems. That's, again, how they go from 90 items down to 50. They're cutting off a lot of the easier ones. Then level 2s, on the easy module, you had 9. You only have 4. But the big shift is the 3s. You went from having 5 level 3 questions up to 12. They're asking you a lot of these mid-hard level questions. And finally, level 4s, you're going from having only 1 on the easy module, you're going to have 5. They're going to ask you a lot. So you see the shape of each of the The adaptive modules is very different. And this is, pause for a moment, get this. I really want you to understand this. This is kind of, when they say it's a digital adaptive PSAT, this is the slide which kind of explains what that means. Baseline, everyone takes it. It's all similar levels, nice recipe of easy, medium, and hards. If I don't do as well, I'm going easier. If I do better, I'm going harder. And I'm going to have a different, different mix of questions. You will never, ever know. The only way you'll ever know if you went to the hard module is if your score is going to be over like a 610 in the PSAT. If I get a 680, I went to the hard module. And in a similar fashion, if the only way I'll ever know with certainty that I go to the low module is if I score below a 460. If I score a 390, I went easy. Because again, you get credit for the ones you get right on the first module. And if I score, but that middle range between that 460 and that 610, I have no idea. I get a 580. Which one did I do? I have no clue. I'll never know. They won't tell me. So, but if you do get a 700, you did go to the harder module because you can't get that score with the easier one. I hope this makes sense, and we'll have some Q&A time at the end. But this really, I think, is a kind of the crux of what adaptive really means. All right, Master Matt.
Yeah, so there's been a good bit of changes to the kind of questions in there. So all of these are applicable to both the digital SAT and the digital PSAT. So the reading writing section has a big overhaul. All the questions are in very specific categories, and there's definitely a structure to this where as you go through that. They've added back the sentence completions, which were something that had been retired back in 2015, though they are testing them in a different way. Prior, they were very punitive and testing obscure words for Victorian literature, and now it's more like the words you should actually see in a college textbook. So we have some we're not gonna go through every possible, all the types, but some of the kind of unique ones. So here are the words of context. And if you look at this one, we see that the words here are not, they're not like $5 words. These are, words that you should have in your vocabulary on there. And so I mean, they do get harder than this one. But the most, and they get easier, honestly, as well. And the way they came up with the words is that they actually took a bunch of textbooks and digitized them, and then took out all like the most basic words, right? Like basic verbs, prepositions, articles, and then took out like words that were like jargon and kind of focused on like what are the key words you see in college textbooks again and again. All right, and then we got a command of evidence. This is kind of similar to the current paper test. We're looking for evidence, but the topic is different because you see this is talking about poetry, and it's kind of a wild question where you have they give you a claim, and then you find the line reference that matches that claim, and they will definitely use poetry. They've shown that they definitely go back all the way to Shakespeare now. They also have seen plays, and so a lot more diversity in the types of passages. Like that the previous question was a humanities passage, which the SAT didn't have before. So we're seeing quite a few differences there. And then we have these inference questions where they give you a passage, and then you basically have to complete it. In where what is the most logical sentence to conclude. So this is really about understanding the claims that the researchers or theorists are making, and kind of putting these ideas together, like what is logical in those. So we have like really thinking about and focusing on like this. It says however, and and focusing on the logic in that passage. And then one of the weirdest ones they got there is these rhetorical synthesis questions that start off with it's a bulleted list of like kind of pretty basic sentences, and then you have to kind of synthesize those into like a statement, making sure to answer what the question's asking. Here it says introduce the research of these people to audience already familiar with the idea of global warming. So you wouldn't want to choose something that's like introducing the idea of climate change. And then you kind of go through those. Those are definitely a different kind of style. So we'll transition into math here. So there's fewer questions, and the Blue Book has Desmos built in, which is a graphic calculator. If you want to play with it, again, you can do it tonight at desmos.com. And it is a nicely fully functioning graphic calculator. I think that it works better than your classic TI-84 in the sense that you can click on things. If you want to see the intercepts, you just click on the point. You don't have to, like try to zero in. And you can, so getting familiar with Desmos is really important in there, and learning its little tricks. They've also really reduced the reading burden on this. One of the things that they've decided is that the reading section is about reading and the math is about math. And they do have some graphs on the reading where there's a little passage and then maybe a table, but they said on the reading section they won't even ask you for the difference or ask you to multiply. It's some very basic math skills. And they've also gotten rid of the kind of word problems that are just kind of clunky and use unfamiliar terminology. It's most of the questions now are just like, here's an equation, do something with it, or like something that it can be pretty basically understood. So any kind of buying cantaloupes for the cotillion or something, all that kind of just big unfamiliar terms and stuff, all that stuff is gone, and it should just be straightforward math. So for those that are less comfortable with reading, or if English is not your first language, you should feel more at home with the math now. There are some differences between the PSAT math and the SAT math, and this is of the digital, for both of these, to be clear. The digital PSAT has less of the most advanced kind of factoring and graphing, so you're probably not going to see any cubics or any kind of higher power functions besides just parabolas on there. And then for whatever reason, and on the curriculum team, which I'm part of, we were kind of we don't really know why, they just don't test on circles. And so that includes geometric circles and area circumference, or graphing on a extra coordinate plane. So none circles won't show up for whatever reason. So definitely learning how to use Desmos and knowing that you can use it to solve all kinds of different things. If you have a system of equations, you can put in you can graph these equations, and if you're looking for a solution, it's where they touch. There's a lot of things you can do with Desmos, and it's the fully function the whole Desmos suite. So you can do quite a few things. You can build tables in it, and you can use sliders to kind of change make a variable within it, and see how you can make the slope be a slider and have it adjust. So definitely learning how to use Desmos. That being said, if you want to bring your own calculator, you can do that. That you can still have an additional calculator. I would say that Desmos is the weakest in arithmetic, and I find just trying to do some division is kind of weird in it, but it does work. It's just it's not like your standard scientific calculator. So you can definitely bring that, and you can definitely have paper and a pencil, and you can write out you don't have to do everything on the screen. You can write out your stuff. So yeah, and I think I kind of already said that, but yeah, learning how to use Desmos creatively and efficiently is one of the best uses of time to getting ready for that math. And then to kind of talk about this, so here we have, if these are from the digital test, so we can see that algebra is important on both tests. The SAT primarily tops out at algebra 2. But then you can see that there are fewer advanced math problems. So that's why I was talking about those cubics. But there's more problems about data solving and data analysis. That's going to be basic probability, averages, percentages, that kind of thing. And then a little bit less geometry, though it's a pretty small amount. Either way, it's 3 or 4 questions. But you may I guess part of that is they got rid of the circle, so they have fewer topics to talk about. Right, there's going to be many test forms, and I think they've promised that they're everyone has their own unique test form. In the early students internationally have taken the SAT in this new digital form. We haven't like, we could just see them talking on Reddit. They were talking about similar problems. So I think that they, as Jed sort of alluded to earlier, they're kind of more of that, like, we'll shuffle numbers or, you know, change the order of things versus like completely new questions, especially for like reading passages being like completely different. But the idea of you trying to, you know, to cheat with, you know, because with the students next to you, you only see one question at a time, so it's going to, you know, it's definitely, that's not going to be effective. All right, and we have some, you know, Desmos does have some nice tools in it. There's a timer you can see. You can also turn it off if it stresses you out. You can hide it and, you know, and look at it when you want. There's going to be a reference sheet of commonly used formulas in the math. It is the same as the current PSAT and SAT. You can annotate on the reading, so you can underline things and write little notes. You can do an answer eliminator, which basically, if you turn it on, then you can say, I don't like A, and it basically like crosses A out for you. Highly recommend doing that the first time. And there's also ways you can adjust the size of things as you need on there. We got, you know, this is the way to track questions here. So you can see if you, what you've done. So for this student, they have answered the first 2 questions. They skipped number 4, then they answered the next, you know, up to question 9, and then they didn't feel good about question 6. So that's a flag, and that's just that's a way for you. Oh, I want to go back to question 6. So you can move in that section. No reason to be worried about that. How to prepare. I mean, you know, learning the test format, learning like the setup on there. We're still waiting for the SAT to release the digital version of the PSAT. There are SATs on there, but you know, they are similar enough that I don't think there's any, you know, any reason to avoid them. You're focused on the question at hand. You know, all that item response theory and the pretest questions and stuff, and which module you end up to do, when that's just going to affect you when at that moment there's a question on screen and you should answer it. And I think just like, it's okay to understand the back end of it, but we have to just like, you know, play the game there. It's like, it's the same thing as like if you're trying to play you know, a video game and you're worried about the physics engine, like well, how does that work? You know, like when I move my character around, you're probably gonna do better like not thinking about it. Right, I didn't blow past your thing, dude, Jed. I feel like I'm talking a bunch.
No, I think it's okay.
Okay, all right. So about national merit. So the national merit is a if you're not familiar with that term, it's a national organization that gives scholarships, and quite honestly, it's one of the best things you could have on your college application. Being a national merit scholar, just you know, it means that your PSAT score was in the top 1% of your state, and it recognized that the PSAT gets you in the running for it. You still have to do things to complete it. This is a way to determine candidates. And in the past, they used some, like, they had their own little weird score that was out of 224. That was kind of like they were using the score that was from the when the SAT went up to 2400 instead of 1600. That scale doesn't exist because they used the sub scores for reading and writing, and so it's unclear what the new national merit qualifying score will be, if there is one. I think that's unknown. I asked the College Board in a closed door meeting about it, and they were just like, it's up to national merit. So and I've looked at the national merit page quite a bit trying to find that, and I just, you know, it's a lot of just like their website is just little bios of kids who've done well, which is charming but not very helpful when you're trying to find some actual info. All right, Jed, you want to take over?
Cool. All right. So for those of you out there who get accommodations, who have a diagnosed disability, and you're going to have a SSD code College Board, the nice thing is getting accommodations is actually easier, and it's much easier to work with accommodations. Additionally, a lot of kids are going to have things that are built in that essentially before were accommodations. Now they're just part and parcel of the package. And so you're gonna be able to, change the zoom, change contrast. Before you had to have a accommodation for a calculator. Now it's always there. Some kids, there was a section with calc without by a disability. I could have it always, but now everyone has it always. And so that's pretty cool. Now, when you have a disability in a code, when you go in there the morning of the test, you're going to enter your SSD code, and then instantly the machine is going to be giving you your accommodation, not the proctor. So if you get time and a half, you enter my code 8856755, boom, my machine gives me time and a half or double time. Or if I get extra breaks, the machine does it. So the proctors aren't in charge of this anymore. Additionally, you're going to have this cool stuff where some kids have a hard time reading, and they're going to have text to speech. So all I have to do is bring a headphone, plug it in to my machine, and it'll actually read and play back. I can fast forward it, go back, play it again. Versus before with paper, you had to have like a human reader, which was much more cumbersome. And this is so much easier. So a lot of good stuff happening. Now, there is also, you may have friends who have a disability who end up taking a paper-based test. That is something, because some kids, for whatever reason, can't read on a screen, visual acuity, optical problems, whatever it is. And so the language is, if you are unable to test with the digital test, you can request a paper test. Now, the paper test is longer, not as efficient. They're asking you more questions. And here's the brief structure. So instead of having 2 hours and 14 minutes of content, you're going to have 2 hours and 44 minutes of content. They also are getting rid of all the experimental questions. Every question counts, trying to get you enough items to give you an actual score. All right. Now, the feedback. So I mentioned that things went digital all over the world in March and in May, and the rollout was a success. We had students in our, for our parent companies, from our partner companies we work with, and the feedback was universally positive. No one had any major problems. There were very few cancellations. There were fewer cancellations all over the globe than there were in 4 states, like Florida, New York, Jersey, and Cali. And so, grand scheme of things, it was a success. We did hear some feedback. People, as Matt mentioned, although they give you 95.5 seconds per question, you have to watch your pacing, because on the baseline section to the adaptive sections, the level of difficulty could increase pretty meaningfully. And so you have to, be able to modify your pace as the material gets harder, and don't spend the full minute and a half on a really easy question and so forth. And everything we heard was students said, have to learn how to use Desmos. It's there, it's baked in, but practice some. Don't go in there cold and just show up. Spend a little bit of time getting to know the format and structure, how to use it. It'll help you. Some kids already use it in school. They have a bit of an advantage, but honestly, it won't take you that long to practice, learn the buttons, learn how to track, to points. It's a very powerful tool. One thing that in the world of test preparation we don't love is that our answer, the score return, is getting a lot more black boxy. We're not going to be getting ever again the same level of detail as we've been used to, which is like currently the GMAT. Here, like before, we'd see number 1, you missed, you answered C, the answer was B. Number 2, all that goes away. They're not giving you back the full 100, 100 items. Here's how you did. All they're giving you back is this sheet right now is what we're seeing. So reading, writing, you got set 7 bars. What does that mean? Not sure. The example of this is here. So look at the reading and writing. The student got a 730. All right, so they missed 70, this actually is from the full scale SAT. So they missed 70 points from the SAT. But where did they miss? And how many did they miss? We have no idea. All we know is expression of ideas. There's 1 bar missing of the 7. So did they miss a really important question? Did they miss 2 questions or 3 questions? No clue. In which section? No idea. On math, the student got a 750. So missed 50 points of content. But then on their thing, on problem solving, there are 2 empty bars, and geometry and trig, there are 3 empty bars. So they missed 5 bars, lost 50 points. The other kid missed 1 bar, lost 70 points. It's hard to figure out what exactly happened in terms of, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to be doing our own practice tests with very rich, robust feedback. We can see, analyze, figure out what you missed, maybe why you missed it, but the feedback is not going to be as rich. So that is one of the things that we're losing. And part of this is to avoid issues with a student hey, I missed 7 and got this score, you missed 4 and did better. They are just getting rid of all of that. That whole debate gets wiped away by some of the opacity of this score return. So that is just what it is, but I understand why they're doing it.
Yeah, and we should assume that the PSAT score reports, because that was from a March digital SAT, so that was a real that was a real student. That was something we made up.
Yeah, one of our kids.
Yeah, but
so
we assume it's going to look that way.
Yeah, unless things change, and things could change, but right now, assume you're not going to get this full information, because again, that could lead to kids being upset. Hey, I got more right, you scored higher, what's going on? This wipes all that out. So now it's important to know that there seems to be a pretty strong preference for this digital test versus the paper test. Among our students, we work with hundreds of kids, international students. And also, there was a pretty big pilot, 5,500 kids who had taken both the paper-based SAT and then the digital SAT and asked, which one do you like better? 8 of 10 kids said digital was better. That's compelling. And one of the primary reasons is short and sweet. It was a shorter test, and also it was less rush. Kids had more time per question and all the different tools. And there are a lot of reasons why kids like this test. So additionally, the admins like it too. They're not handing out Scantrons. They're not matching Scantrons with booklets, gathering, mailing. It's just the kids come in, everything is preloaded. They give them the code. And they have this, every single administrator proctor, they're going to have a tablet with everything preloaded. One of the cool things, which I think is pretty nifty about this, is they're going to be able to look in the classroom, see every student, and see their progress real time on their tablet. So if in seat number 7, Jennifer, you're only on number 13. Are your peers around you are on number 19, 20? The proctor goes and say, hey, are you doing okay? So they can actually track where you are real time. And so if there's a problem, they can go and talk to you at first, which is, I think, pretty cool. But the feedback again was, things were pretty darn smooth during the administration. So again, why do kids like it? Why do I think it's shorter? That's a big deal. Passages are getting shorter. You're not reading this huge thing. It's just a little bitty paragraph. A question next. You have more time per question. You have your calculator always available, and your results come back faster. So this is a lot of things make the student friendly. Some kids are going to have to adjust from writing all over the test. One of our big things at Applerouth has been active reading. You're circling, you're writing. You can still annotate on the computer, and you can still, of course, write on your scratch paper, but we're not going to have the ability to write on the test like we used to. So that is one change, which I think with practice, you can totally learn how to work that. I've seen kids make that shift for many years on the GMAT and the GRE, and it's a pretty easy shift, go from paper to the screen. All right, testing options for the calendar year. This goes back to Matt.
Yeah, so we're gonna kind of like we talk about the PSAT, but the important to understand the PSAT, is the P is practice for SAT, and this is so I'm going to be speaking to rising juniors kind of more specifically. So if that doesn't, if you were going to be a rising sophomore, or rising freshman, or rising 4th grader, very precocious, but these are like this won't directly apply to you, but I think for juniors they have to make some decisions. So let's get the next slide there. So the paper SAT for rising juniors is still an option, but that testing window ends in December. And so some students want to do that, and it may be because the spring is sports season, and they're on a touring soccer club, and it's just they need to get this done. And so there's nothing wrong with the taking the paper SAT and doing that, though. If that's your path, I would start prepping now. Like use this summer, because there's an August test, October, November, December, and then that test is gone. It is decommissioned, sent out to sea, Viking burial, the whole thing. There's also a hybrid. You can take the paper test and then switch to the digital. There's no issue with that. Whether colleges will see the scores like equal or do super scoring.
There's a wasp in my room.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Buckley.
No, there is a black wasp on my mouse pad.
All right.
That's great.
Cool. It probably won't do much if you leave it be.
Maybe you're right.
We got
Okay.
bees at home here, so all right. But back to the hybrid testing. Oh, so if anyone sees Jed run away, that's
Swatting at things, it's because of the, yeah.
um, yeah, the fun of live webinars, right? So you can take the paper test and then you can move to the digital SAT. The College Board is telling schools to look at those scores equally, and whether they will super score, which is like you take your reading section from one and your math section from the other and put them together. That's a big question. That's up to colleges to decide on that. So, but just know that once that December SAT happened, the paper is done. All right, and then if you're able to,
I am. The wasp is gone.
okay, all right. Or you could do digital all the whole way, and that PSAT is going to be important because you're going to be using that as a baseline, but you're not going to be testing for the school, for colleges until the spring. This would be great if you're a student who's in Algebra 2. It would make sense to wait and get that Algebra 2 knowledge, which is essential for both tests, and you'll definitely know a lot more math in March or May or June than you would, taking it in August. And then there's a fourth option, which is the ACT. The ACT is not planning to change. They did do a press release a week ago saying that they're flirting with some digital testing, but only a couple testing centers, and quite honestly, it's probably not going to affect you. But that is the test. It is the same structure it has been. It's got the English, math, reading, science. We do lots of webinars that talk about SAT versus ACT, so that's not the topic of the day. But there's nothing wrong with that. Now, those four options only really speak to rising juniors that will be juniors in the fall. If you're going to be a rising sophomore, it's just digital SAT or ACT, and that's that's the decision you should be making when you're a rising junior. It's fine just to kind of to learn more about the digital PSAT and see if you like it. And we have a nice little slide on here of what what the testing timelines look like. So the orange is for paper, and then the blue is for digital, with of course the October, the PSAT will be digital for all students. I think you're finishing up there, Jed.
Sure. I'll clean it up, then we'll go to the questions. Yeah. So for us, we've been offering practice tests for the PSAT, the ACT, the SAT for years online. So we have a lot of experience with this, and we're going to be updating everything. We are currently, updating the whole curriculum. We also have a full-scale Applerouth digital practice test. Same format as the PSAT, same format as the SAT. And again, it gives you very rich feedback, question by question analysis, can help you make a more tailored study plan. So we're also working on a second one this summer, and Matt is helping with
is writing it today.
Writing it today as we speak, with many years of reading and studying these forms. And so for us, we're going to pause for a moment. Peter, if you don't mind launching the poll just for a second, getting a sense of who's here in the room. We have a very short little poll. It's literally takes you 15 seconds. Are you a student, parent, teacher? If so, where are you in the high school, junior, senior, sophomore, freshman? Are there any of the areas that we do that may benefit you? And then if so, you want someone to reach out now or not now. That's it. And you're done. Very quick and easy. If we can help you, we'd love to help you. But next, we're going to shift to our Q&A section.
I got some good questions in here.
There are some. All right, let's open it up, and then we can start hitting the Q&A. All right, Matt, onto the first one. There was like an 8-question question.
Yeah, Patty came out of the gate strong.
Out of the gate swinging hard.
Yeah.
Scoring, I think we hit the scoring. Bring your own device. Yes, you can bring your own tablet. You can bring your own laptop. You can't bring a Chromebook. That's not school provided. Can glitches or internet outcuts for the test? Not really, only for a second. On the front and the back. Practice tests administered? Yes, they're online, Blue Book app. Are there question blocks, or are they all full display immediately? You can toggle through them. And there are blocks of question types, but you can go back and forth. You can go from 1 to 22 and then go back. You can jump to 20. So that you aren't locked in. You have total free reign.
Yeah, you can only see one question at a time. So
Yeah,
they put it up on the screen, but you can move within that module. You can move however you want, but you can't skim all the questions. You
no.
have to load one at a
You
time.
load the question, next one, but down at the very bottom, there's a little thing you can click on a question and go to it immediately.
Mm.
That's kind of that mark for review thing. You can hit any question you want and go right to it. Scratch paper, they give you three pieces of it. If you need more, raise your hand. Why is it being changed? Test security, efficiency, student preference, reliability. Is the new PSAT more difficult? No, it's not. Why is it 1 hour shorter? Because they're doing all this adaptive stuff. They can knock off 40 questions because they're using some of the item response questioning and also the adaptive nature. If you're getting all the hard ones right, let's not give you a bunch of easy ones, which you're probably gonna get right. So it's using, it's called item response theory, all these correlations they've already run on different items together. All right, how similar is the PSAT to the SAT?
Very.
It is extremely profoundly similar.
Yeah.
Same exact structure, same number of items, same exact timing, a slight difference in some of the content and a slight scoring difference. Otherwise, they're the same. How can it be fair if some students receive easier questions than other students based on their performance?
I can give
Yeah,
a try.
Matt,
So
fairness.
yeah, I mean, because I think I can see that that, but what you got to remember, like that first module is everyone's module is the same, right? And more in terms of difficulty. And so it's not that it's looking at how you did in that first set and then making a choice, okay, putting it in there. So everyone has everyone has the opportunity to get the the best score. And I think that if you get all the questions right, you will get a perfect score. I mean, there's not going to be a way where, oh no, we gave you too easy of a form, so even though you got them all right, you still get a 600 or something. So I don't think that it's making the fairness thing is they've certainly thought about that, and the College Board very much wants to be seen as opportunity for students to improve their lot, right, and to as a ladder to to greater success. So I don't think there's going to be anything in that that is trying to disadvantage anyone or skew those results.
Yeah. In terms of, there's a number of questions on the adaptive nature of things. If I move to the harder section, will my test be scored on a higher curve? You do get points instantly for going to the harder section. That's what our team found, that there's a scoring differential.
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit of a pop. But also you're getting all the credit for all the ones you got right. So that is baked in as well.
Again, like it also, the item response theory depends how you do on certain questions. So
right.
But if you get the higher section, you will probably have a higher score than if you went to the lower section.
Yeah. Well, okay, your score report, no, you don't get detail about what's right and wrong. Did you assume you scored lower? You can't really make assumptions. They're not giving you details at all. The only way to tell is if you're outside of the range of the overlap. If I get a 720, I went harder. If I get a 330, I went easy. That's the only thing you get.
Like we know that score report we showed, that obviously that kid went to the upper
harder ones
because he did well.
Yep. Is there more poetry questions?
I can answer that. Well, it's going from 0 to some
0 to something,
because there was no poetry on last year's PSAT, but it's going to be like I missed 2 or 3 questions. That's not like, and it's, they're not going to have to read a real long poem. It'll just be little excerpts or a poem that's maybe a stanza or 2.
Okay, we have a question someone wanted to clarify about is the reading and writing, is the verbal module baseline adaptive the exact same as math? The answer is yes. You're gonna have a baseline verbal, adaptive verbal, 10-minute break, baseline math, adaptive math, and you're finished. That's the whole test.
Yeah.
So they operate in the exact same way, though we have like 27 items for verbal, 22 for math per section, per module, we'll call it. But yeah, it operates the exact same way. Verbal and math, no question.
One little like clarification that they do, like the math definitely goes. The first question is the easiest, the last question is the hardest. That's not the case in the reading, where like they ask all the words in context questions, and the first one is the easiest, and then the last one is the hardest, and then it goes to a new topic and kind of resets again and again for all these different topics. So it's not, doesn't have that like where the last question is the hardest and the first one's the easiest in like if you look at it like we did, that's why we use the math, because like that, seeing the sort of, kind of the building those slopes and stuff was,
But still,
it makes
within
more
math,
sense.
like they'll still vary some. Like my number 1 could be your number 4, but my number 1's not going to be your number 21, if that makes sense. There'll be some variability as math, because everyone has their own mix of items. We're going to send you a recording of this, so that's going to be the link. You can watch it again. Do we offer Desmos practice, Matt?
Yeah. So everyone has access to Desmos. It's desmos.com for first off. We do have a Desmos guide that we've written about using creative tips on this, and currently that guide is used with our tutors and for our clients or in our groups. We don't have like a like public facing guide at this point, but we've already written it's like a good 40-page guide of like how to use Desmos creatively.
Yeah. Now there was one question about adaptive again. Is there an exact cutoff on a correct answer as a module 1? If I miss it by 1 question, do I get pushed to the easy section and forced to a lower score? Yeah, there's going to be a cut score. Whether that may factor in the item response, like you may have to hit a certain level of raw score between the number right and then the weighting. And if you're below that, you're going easy. If you're above that, you're going harder. So there will be a number. And you can still, again, if you go to the easier module and then you do very, very, very well, you can still hit a good score. On the SAT, you can still hit like a 660. On the PSAT, a 610 or so, 620. But you're not going to ever be able to get a 780 because you've already missed too many anyhow, and which is the same as the current test. If I miss 8 questions, I'm getting a 6 something, because everyone I miss, it's just counts against me. So it's not really changing in that regard. If you miss too many, your score is affected on the current paper test and on digital. It'll just be a little bit different. There's how that works. Then Shreya's questions, Matt, want to hit those too?
Yeah. Okay. So I got 2 questions. So those are topics that should go over in the digital PSAT. So that's obviously we're going to split between reading and writing. There is grammar on the writing section, and they kind of do your second question, which is like for the verbal section, are there going to be mixed questions, like some reading comprehension, some English? Yes. So there are going to be questions about grammar. There's going to be questions on commas and punctuation and semicolons and verb tense. Compared to the paper test, like far fewer and less concepts on there, but certainly knowing the sort of the basics of verb tense and pronoun usage and possession, all that stuff is definitely on there. In terms of the math for the topics, it is primarily algebra 2 and algebra 1 concepts with a little bit of some data representation and geometry thrown in there. If you're curious about the range and really want to study on that, I would say that taking a practice test would be the best way to kind of experience how those questions, the frequency and range of questions on there.
Cool. I think we have exhausted all of our questions.
Yeah.
So everybody, want to thank you so much for coming out tonight. Hope this answered some of your questions about this digital PSAT. We'll be doing more of these talks as we get closer to October. And so we'll hopefully be able to answer more of those. And practice tests, well, they're identical. The PSAT and SAT are the exact same structure and form and timing. They're slightly different. There's tiny content differences and scoring differences, but otherwise these tests have never been so similar in history.
Yeah,
there's so much, it's like 90-some% the identical. So taking a practice SAT will give you plenty of great practice. Again, you're not going to have the circles, you're not going to have some of the cubics or some of the more advanced conic section stuff, but other than that, it's pretty darn close. Anytime. So if you need any help with this stuff, getting prepped or doing that's what we do for a living. We help students with these tests. So please reach out to us, info@Applerouth. Look for more webinars coming up over the next few months. And especially as we learn more, we'll share with you everything that we know. All right, y'all. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you.